Imagine waking up to find that the U.S. economy is going through its worst shock in decades, impacting everything from your job security to the price of goods and services. Well, according to the famous entrepreneur and billionaire Elon Musk, this nightmare could soon become a reality if the Federal Reserve doesn't step in to contain the regional banking crisis in the U.S. So what's the issue here? Financial blog Zero Hedge recently highlighted the critical role played by small to medium-sized banks in the U.S. financial system. This comes after the abrupt collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, a lender of tech startups, which was taken over by regulators since the 2008 financial crisis. If the Financial Reserve fails to contain the regional bank collapse, then there's a serious risk of another Great Depression, warns Zero Hedge. And Elon Musk agrees. In response to Zero Hedge's tweet, he called this risk a serious one. So, what does that mean? Well, buckle up and get ready to learn more about this potential economic crisis and why Elon Musk is sounding the alarm. And if you're interested in other Elon Musk-related content, make sure to check out our channel. Firstly, we need to understand why the potential collapse of small to medium-sized banks is such a big deal in detail. After all, we often hear about large banks and Wall Street when it comes to the U.S. economy. But the truth is that small to medium-sized banks play a crucial role in the U.S. financial system. They serve as the primary lenders for small businesses, which are the backbone of the American economy. These banks also play a critical role in providing loans for real estate purchases and development, which has a ripple effect on the broader economy. In fact, small to medium-sized banks account for over 50% of commercial and industrial lending and over 60% of residential real estate lending, among other loans. These banks are often more willing to lend to local businesses and individuals, which helps spur economic growth in their respective regions. Furthermore, these banks provide competition to larger banks in Wall Street, which helps keep the financial system more stable. If large banks were the only option for lending, then any collapse or financial crisis would have a more significant impact on the entire economy. So, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and the potential collapse of other small to medium-sized banks is not just a problem for those directly affected by the loss of their deposits and loans. It has broader implications for the entire economy and could potentially trigger a larger financial crisis. Now that we understand the importance of small to medium-sized banks, let's take a closer look at what happened with Silicon Valley Bank and why it's raised concerns about the stability of regional banks in the U.S. SVB was a lender to tech startups, and the first to be taken over by regulators since the financial crisis in 2008. Its collapse has triggered discussions about the need for the Federal Reserve to step in and prevent further collapses. The collapse of SVB has also highlighted the risks of relying on a few large banks to provide funding to the tech industry. SVB was one of the few banks that focused solely on lending to startups in Silicon Valley, and its collapse has left many tech startups without access to funding. The collapse has also raised questions about the role of regulators in preventing such collapses. Some experts have criticized regulators for failing to identify the risks posed by the bank and taking action to prevent its collapse. In response to the collapse of SVB, Elon Musk has called for the Federal Reserve to step in and prevent further collapses of regional banks. Musk believes that the collapses of these banks could lead to another Great Depression, similar to the economic crisis that ran from 1929 through 1939. That's why understanding the historical context of the Great Depression is essential to grasp the significance of Elon Musk's warning about the risk of another one. The Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in modern history, lasting from 1929 to 1939. It originated in the United States but quickly spread to other parts of the world, causing massive unemployment, poverty, and social unrest. The Great Depression was caused by a combination of factors, including overproduction, excessive speculation in the stock market, and the failure of banks. At the time, there was no federal insurance for bank deposits, and many small banks failed because people were losing their savings. The stock market crash of 1929 marked the beginning of the Great Depression, which saw the stock market lose 89% of its value in 1932. The Great Depression had far-reaching consequences on the global economy, international trade collapsed, and many countries adopted protectionist policies, leading to a sharp decline in world trade. Unemployment soared and poverty and homelessness became widespread. Governments were forced to intervene to stabilize their economies, leading to the growth of the welfare state and the expansion of government spending. Given the devastating impact of the Great Depression, it's not surprising that Elon Musk's warning about the risk of another one is making headlines. Musk's concerns about the collapse of regional banks in the U.S. could have far-reaching consequences for the global economy, given the interconnectedness of financial systems today. If the Federal Reserve intervenes in this situation, it'll play a crucial role in ensuring the stability of the U.S. financial system. In the wake of the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and the concerns raised by Elon Musk about the risk of another Great Depression, the Federal Reserve's actions will be closely watched. The Federal Reserve has several tools at its disposal to address the current crisis and prevent a larger economic shock. One of the primary tools used by the Federal Reserve is monetary policy. This involves setting interest rates and adjusting the money supply to influence economic growth and stability. The Federal Reserve can lower interest rates to stimulate borrowing and spending, or raise interest rates to slow down inflation and prevent bubbles from forming in the financial system. The Federal Reserve can also use quantitative easing, which involves buying large quantities of securities to inject more money into the economy and stimulate growth. Another thing the Federal Reserve can do is regulatory oversight. The Federal Reserve oversees and regulates the nation's banks and financial institutions to ensure that they operate in a safe and sound manner. This includes conducting stress tests to evaluate the resilience of banks to adverse economic conditions, as well as setting capital and liquidity requirements to ensure that banks have sufficient resources to withstand economic shocks. In addition to this, the Federal Reserve can also provide emergency funding to banks and financial institutions through its discount window. This allows banks to borrow funds from the Federal Reserve as a lower rate in times of stress or liquidity shortages. The Federal Reserve can also provide emergency lending programs to stabilize specific sectors of the financial system, as it did during the 2008 financial crisis. The Federal Reserve has a range of tools at its disposal to address the current crisis in regional banks and prevent a larger economic shock. However, it will require careful management and coordination to ensure that these tools are used effectively and efficiently. The stakes are high, and the global economy will be watching closely to see how the Federal Reserve responds to the challenges ahead. To sum up this video, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and the concerns raised by Elon Musk about the stability of regional banks in the U.S. have brought attention to the potential risks to the global economy. The Federal Reserve plays a critical role in preventing such collapses and stabilizing the financial system. However, the tools available to the Federal Reserve may not be sufficient to address the current crisis and prevent a larger economic shock. As we look ahead, it's worth considering what steps can be taken to address the underlying issues in the U.S. banking system and prevent a repeat of the Great Depression. What role can technology play in ensuring the stability of the financial system? How can we ensure that the lessons of the past are not forgotten? And perhaps most importantly, what can we do to build a more resilient and equitable global economy for the future? These are important questions that we must continue to explore as we navigate the uncertain economic landscape of the 21st century. So what are your thoughts on these crises? Feel free to share your views in the comments section below. This does conclude today's video. Make sure to hit that bell icon for upcoming videos, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe.